Welcome back everyone. In this video, we're going to begin working on the Dad Jokes app. So I've already made a new empty application. I haven't changed a thing, except I installed Axios, npm install Axios in the terminal. And we'll be using that to make requests. I like using Axios, but there are many other libraries you can use to make those requests, or you can do it without a library. In looking at the app, I'm really just going to have two main components, the joke list, which will just make this entire thing. We could have made this sidebar's own component, I guess. But I'm going to just make a joke list component and then a joke component. Each one of these white little boxes is an individual joke. Okay, so let's begin. We're going to hop over here. I'm going to make my joke list component, jokelist.js. And to start, we'll just do an H1 that says dad jokes. And then let's make sure that in our app.js, we're importing it. Get rid of that logo, import joke list from /joke list, and then get rid of all of this stuff. And then we'll add in a single joke list and we should see, okay, we're seeing our H1. So let's work with this API now. The URL we want is a GET request to this https://iconhasdadjoke.com/. I'm going to copy this and then I'm going to go to my joke list. I'm going to start by importing Axios from Axios. And then where is the best place to actually make our request? Well, just like we saw a couple videos ago and a couple sections ago, we're going to do it in component did mount. So let's add component did mount and we will load jokes. So we need this URL and we need to do an axios.get that URL. Make sure we put our parens in. And I'll just begin by making this an async function, but I'll warn you, I am going to refactor this eventually because we do want to load jokes at the very beginning when the component mounts, but we also want to load jokes doing the exact same logic when you click the button that doesn't exist yet, but there will be a button and we're doing the exact same thing, but we can't call component did mount again and again. React calls it for us at the beginning, so I'm going to move this to its own method later on, but this is fine for now. So let's make a variable called joke equals await axios.get, just using an async function to make it easier. And actually let's call it res because it's not just the joke, it's the response. And let's just begin by console.logging res. Open up the console here and we get an object. But here's the annoying thing. It's giving us inside of data HTML. And that's because the way the API is set up, it has the same endpoint for the HTML version and the JSON version. So what we need to specify is an accept header as application/JSON. The default is to HTML, so it's giving us HTML, but we want the JSON response. So we need to go back to our request, await axios.get, and after that URL, we'll pass in an object, headers, and that takes an object. And the header we want is called accept, and it needs to be application/JSON. So this just goes along with the request and says, hey, we're looking for the JSON version, not the HTML, please. And we're now getting JSON. We don't have all that ugly HTML in there. And we want data.joke. So res.data.joke. Perfect. Okay, so we're getting a single joke. Now what we need to do is run this a bunch of times. So we're going to do it 10 times to start, but instead of hard coding that as 10, I'm going to make it a default prop. And we'll call it num jokes to get. It's kind of long, but that's fine. And we'll start it at 10. The other thing to consider is where are we going to put these jokes? We need to have somewhere in the state to actually save these jokes, because we're going to have, let's say, an array called jokes or all jokes. And then whenever that changes, it's going to re-render a whole bunch of new stateless joke components, which don't yet exist, following the same pattern we've seen a bunch of times. So I'm going to initialize my state in the constructor, super props, and then we'll just set this.state equals, and then let's just set jokes to be an empty array. So next, we want to repeat this process of getting a new joke 10 times, or whatever props.numJokesToGet is. So next, I'm going to make a temporary array called jokes, and we're going to fill this up with all of the new jokes, and then at the very end, we're going to set state. Instead of setting state each time, which would mean we're setting state 10 times to get new jokes, we're going to set it once after we have 10 new jokes. So then we're going to loop, And I'm going to do a while loop. While jokes.length, so this jokes, it's empty, is less than this dot props dot, what do we call it, num jokes to get. And again, the reason that I'm doing a while loop is that we might have duplicates down the line. And if we did a for loop, this would be 10 times no matter what. If we had duplicates, we're only going to loop 10 times. But if we have duplicates, we might need to loop 11 or 12 to get 10 unique ones. So while jokes.length is less than that, we're going to make a request. Then we're going to take the res.data.joke and push that into jokes, which is just an array over here, an empty array. So we're pushing it in. Great. And then afterwards, let's console.log jokes. So we're still not setting state anywhere. And it takes a moment, but we're getting 10 jokes. There we go. So for now, we can do a really simple set state. This dot set state, and we'll just say jokes is equal to our jokes array. And that's going to overwrite whatever is in there, but right now there's nothing in there. So if we come over here, we go to React, we should see inside of the state, we have 10 jokes. Okay, so now let's do some rendering. So we're going to go to our render down here. We're going to need to do our standard map to create a new array and then render for now just a div or an li, but eventually it will be a joke component. So let's give this div a class just to help us out when we start styling it. And let's just follow the standard pattern. We'll call it joke list. And then we have our h1, and then let's make another div with a class name of joke list dash jokes. And then inside of here, we'll map over this .state.jokes. So this .state.jokes.map. And then for each j, we'll call it, instead of a joke component, we'll just do a div is fine for now. And the div is going to contain the joke, which is j, because the way our jokes are set up right now, we're only storing the actual text of the joke. And we have our 10 jokes showing up. And if I refresh the page, we're going to get 10 new jokes. There could be duplicates from what we saw earlier, but that's okay. We're not storing any history or anything in local storage. We'll get there. So now we're loading 10 jokes. We have our joke list component loading those jokes. In the next video, I'm going to style the joke list just a little bit so we can get the sidebar over there and the heading and sort of our general layout that looks like this, but none of the joke stuff, none of the functionality yet.